Barret, Jhin, Caitlyn, more of those kind of controlled utility champions, and Fabi can play a little bit more. I think we've seen out of him so far in terms of he has a Lucian, he has a Twitch, has a Kalista, this kind of stuff as well. So that's where if you're big on Jackals, maybe you kind of use this series as an attempt to find a blueprint to execute later on in the actual semifinals match, assuming that, you know, eUnited is able to take this one.
Yeah, well, being on 7-13 for this Challenger Series matchup, we already see some of the more powerful pickups on the patch more recently from Rift Rivals being banned away, the Corki's banned away, the Rek'Sai, which has risen in huge popularity and huge contesting rate, as well as the traditional Zac and Galio bans coming in.
The Peck and Wolf, we just mentioned being an excellent Corki, excellent poke player. No surprise to see eUnited ban that one away. Caitlyn ban also comes in. They don't want Fabi to abuse, potentially, definitely, like we were saying. And then, as you said, the Rek'Sai, it's pretty much up there as the #2 jungler, tied with Elise in a lot of people's minds. They're pretty different champions in terms of what they do come later game, but both really, really strong in the early game. So no surprise to see that one taken away. Does open up this Elise first pick potentially for eUnited here. Now that Big Gosh Jackals ended up banning away LeBlanc with their last choice.
Then we did see what happens at Rift Rivals when LeBlanc gets through the pick and ban phase. So the NA side of the Rift still continuing to ban that one away, which, as you did mention, lets the Elise go straight through for eUnited. But of course, we've seen things like Lee Cindy played into Elise. We've seen the Gragas now that the Bammy, Cinder, and Cinderhulk changes have come into effect in 7-13. The more tanky kind of style junglers get just a little bit of quality of life.
There's no shortage of things to really pick from. I mean, even in Korea last night, I believe we saw Sejuani. So there's a ton of stuff that you can play in the jungle. And AD carry is somewhat the same way. We talk about the rise of Twitch and Kalistas and all these things. Tristana coming back in the meta. That's one of the reasons that you would say maybe it favors Big Gosh Jackals here, because we have at least over the course of their career so far seen more out of Fabi. Definitely, you know, no shade at him. It's just kind of the role he's been kind of playing on his own team.
Right.
Who knows? He hasn't been asked to step up and be a primary carry yet.
And last year in the Challenger Series Finals, when they went up against Goldcoin United, you did see him get a little bit abused when they had to ban out basically his top 3 AD carries, and he was put onto something like the Sivir. So we'll see what he winds up going for here. Ashe, Varus, and Jhin still all left open, but Big Gosh Jackals have taken that very early Tristana in addition to the Gragas.
It's a champion that doesn't really have that many bad matchups early on. In certain matchups, it even has pressure, and then come the mid-late game when you hit those 3 items, you get that Energizer build going, you have extremely long range, you have that reset capabilities, you can basically 1v5 the game if you have the right supporting cast and the rest of your team, and Gragas is a great start for that. You want some front line for that Tristana.
Yeah, meanwhile on the opposite side, we see the playmaking support of Thresh being locked in for eUnited and Zeyzal, and then Gnar making an appearance in the top lane here for the eUnited squad. Gnar also seen pretty much a rise in popularity as of recently. He's, of course, can bully around some of those very strong kind of tank matchups in the top lane, but doesn't necessarily do too badly into some of those carry matchups either.
Yeah, he's a good little mix of both. He does, it's a little surprising to see him blind so early on with things like Kennen still up. It does put Big Gosh Jackals in a little bit of a position there where with their last pick they need to pick if they want to get pinched in the top or the support position, because whichever one you don't take last will get banned out probably by eUnited. Maybe not, as we actually see a Cassidy ban coming for eUnited. So gonna leave the top lane up and just say, Licorice, you know, we trust you to, you know, play the Gnar into any matchup. We're not gonna really ban around you.
Well, Licorice has kind of been one of the standout top laners in the North American Challenger Series and the standout player for eUnited, really. So Licorice, very consistent player in the top lane, kind of one of the carries for eUnited. They seem to put his trust into him, but they want to give something very favorable to GBM in that mid lane matchup. Much like, I was kind of looking into the numbers because the solo lanes for eUnited have, in my mind, kind of been dominating performances, but GVM specifically hasn't had the flashiest statistics. He's still like top 2 in Challenger Series, but he's not like what you would expect GBM to be coming from a professional scene into the Challenger scene.
I guess, but even his time in North American LCS and even his, you know, back when he was in the LCK, he was never like a lane dominant player. He was never the guy that's going to come in and smash you really hard. He always played to go mostly even in lane, work with his team, and then in the mid-late game, he has exceptional team fighting. And that's why, you know, he doesn't seem to be crushing quite as hard as, say, a Licorice, or even definitely has the highest CSD, I believe, of bot laner. So he isn't put in that role, like we said. He's not given like, oh, you know, here's an Orianna, go 1v1 the matchup super hard and try and smash it. It's here's an Orianna, hold on the lane, and we're going to make plays around you, often with Licorice, often with Danny going crazy. So no surprise to see a little bit less focus on GBM.
Yeah, but you bring up the Orianna analogy, and this one's going to be on the side of Big Gosh Jackals, so Peck and Wolf will be taking that one into the mid lane. And then the second ban phase had heavily targeted down on Deathly, as you mentioned, Big God's maybe looking to do in this matchup, getting rid of the Jhin, getting rid of the Ashe, getting rid of the utility. The last one left open is the Sivir, which he defaults back to. There's the Vladimir and a Kled coming in from the side of Big Gosh Jackals.
Yeah, so the Kled, it's not going to beat the Gnar straight up, but it does have that kind of gank threat when he's in that mini form. It's a little surprising to see them opt for that, not wanting to go for a more counter pick focus because you can take things like a Jace or a Kennen that tends to beat the Gnar. Those range matchups are often pretty good. But it looks like they want to, you know, get another tank in a front line and try and take this in a 5v5 setting because you do have that Tristana, and they're focused on giving her front line and setup to let her start going crazy in fights.
All right, and in addition to that, you also kind of have like a guaranteed engagement tool. Of course, you synergize it with the Braum and the Gragas. You have a lot of ways in for the Big Gods Jackals lineup, but very similarly from the side of eUnited, you have a Gnar whose initiation sometimes a little bit iffy, but once he jumps into that backline, is able to just Gnar everybody forward and just set them all up for that Vladimir AoE. So as we load into the Rift for game number 1 here, eUnited are on the hunt for securing themselves the #1 seed in the North American Challenger Series, and while Big Gods Jackals will be stuck in 4th no matter what happens in this matchup, they're looking for some very interesting scouting information. They take down eUnited here today. They're going to play Goldcoin United next week in the semifinals.
And they both teams opting into basically a 5v5 team fight comp here. eUnited do have the potential to open up the split push if the Gnar gets ahead, so we'll need to see if that's what they choose to do. But instead, Big God Jackals not going for a counter pick, want that 5v5. Like you said, the extra ease of initiating that comes with the Kled ultimate, it doesn't put as much of a burden on your Gragas, because I know some Gragas players feel pressured when they're the only initiation tool and they have to hit this crazy insec, and everyone knows that's what you're looking for. It's so telegraphed, it's hard to sometimes find openings, and having that easier way of delivering the ball with the Kled is nice on the side of Big Gods Jackals, because that Trist, you just want to get people low, and then Trist can go crazy once the first death comes in.
Yeah, and you can wind up using that explosive cask as a way to protect the Tristan on top of the Braum, on top of the Orianna. So letting that Tristan just kind of run rampant in later game team fights. We've had some pretty late games in the Challenger Series as of late. Both of the a lot of the matches that wound up going yesterday that we just saw in the highlights wound up going to the Elder Dragon was a point of contention, a second Baron attempt from one of those matchups as well. So the later the games go, the more effective these late game carries are. Although specifically Sivir herself is not too shabby in the later game stages here, and they can even wind up setting up some split push shenanigans using that pick as well.
While that's definitely true, she does have a bit of a weaker laning phase. That's why you tend not to see her right now. It doesn't really bully anybody out. It just is able to wave clear in your best case scenario, which isn't always what you're hoping for. They did see the Braum pick after they already had the Thresh, so they knew it wasn't going to be as high pressure of a lane, not going up against another ranged champion that can potentially abuse Sivir's shorter range. But you see early on, giving up the push to the Tristana, and Big Gods Jackals taking that early push, drop a ward, make sure that Elise can't go for any of those crazy gank paths that everyone's seeming to go for now. The super hard leashes in the bot lane to get an early level 3. You see sometimes the XP quints. So Big Gods Jackals trying to play around that and ward out really early on.
Yeah, they definitely don't want to have some sort of shenanigans happening on either side of the map. As we mentioned in the pregame here, Big Gods Jackals, a big potential here for them to exploit is that bottom lane matchup, and they've already got a decent lane matchup with the Tristana going on into the Sivir, but the rest of the map just kind of has to hang on until they get to that later game point. But from the side of eUnited, we kind of mentioned like, hey, these guys are #1 or #2 in every single one of the roles, #1 team coming into this one. They did wind up losing to Goldcoin United last time yesterday, and first game was like 50 minutes long. In the second game, well, we saw what happened when Solo got Fiora in that matchup. So eUnited for them, this is kind of like redemption. If they're able to take it to Big Gods Jackals this game and just come out ahead over the 4th place team, they're going to be resting easy going on in the playoff.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely want another crack at GCU, I'm sure. Hopefully in the finals this time around for them. But, you know, it's going to be not quite as sweet, you know, beating Big Gods Jackals as it would getting the revenge right away. But you got to deal with what's put in front of you, and they don't want to risk that potential 1 seed and be forced to play Tempo Storm early on. If they end up losing this matchup, that could be the reality that they face, and you suddenly make the first round of the playoffs much, much harder for you. So that's why you see a good opportunity for Big Gods Jackals to make eUnited play very seriously. Like, eUnited still has something to play for.
Well, looks like the first gank of the game may be on Big Gods Jackals' side as Sir T tried to get the long wraparound down onto Vladimir, but GBM just walking straight up. Meanwhile, bottom side of the map, definitely. He and Zeyzal have been pushing in aggressively against Biano and Fabi. We do see the spell shield from Sivir being able to block the explosive charge from Tristana. So some good on the Sivir pick in that bottom lane matchup, but still need to be a little bit respectful of that and the stun coming out.
I mean, a big thing that happened there was I think Big God Jackals were looking for a potential all-in, and Zeyzal timed his flay perfectly, I believe, and actually knocked Fabi out of his jump. And Fabi was blowing the heal to get the extra speed up that they might want to chase down on the Deathly. I might have missed exactly what happened there, but I'm pretty sure Zeyzal just got a free heal out of Fabi denying that all-in attempt.
Yeah, well, there might be gank attempt #2 from the side of Big God Jackals onto this mid lane matchup as Sir T on the Gragas is hovering on the bottom side of this mid lane. And we see GBM pushing quite aggressively on this Vladimir matchup into the Orianna. So it looks like Sir T is going to decide to wind up going back. And we do wind up having just this bottom lane matchup. Now the tables have kind of turned. Tristana with the explosive charge being leveled up early on means, of course, that she's going to be naturally pushing. So eUnited going to be content to just kind of sit back and, as you mentioned, with the Sivir wave clear to continue to farm.
Yep, and we talked about GBM being less lane focused. As you can see, the Vladimir not an extremely strong pick. We will get another look at that skirmish down the bot side here. You see Fabi starting to open up on the Trist, and right as that jump starts, he pops his heal to kind of get that all in onto Deftly, but Zeyzal stopping that before it even really gets going.
Double play coming out from Zeyzal. I said Fabi and Bayano have some pretty decent laning stats on the bottom side of the map. You're going to be hard-pressed to find a better support, except for maybe Mad Life in the Challenger Series right now, than Zeyzal now on this Thresh. Lands a hook onto Bayano. Has to pop the Unbreakable Shield just to walk away and stop some of those Sivir boomerangs.
And I gotta say, Zeyzal, I think, is one of the rookies that we were talking about, the 3 rookies from eUnited last split of Licorice, Deftly, and Zeyzal. I think he was the one that was really slept on. He actually had some of the more impressive play between him and Deftly, though Deftly had the great KDA, he's the AD carry, he's a little bit flashier, so to speak, just because of the position he plays. But Zeyzal, a lot of the time, actually looked a little bit more impressive, even was around the Licorice level before, but Licorice really took off this split. And so he's absolutely no slouch at all. Definitely a very strong player, someone who you can probably expect to see in the LCS sometime soon. Who knows if it's with eUnited or anything, but he's a very, very good player.
He's also the guy that was picking Lulu into pretty much every single matchup in the Challenger Series when no one else was touching it. It's all here and there, blips in professional play in certain matchups. He took it pretty much everywhere. And then there was the reign of terror of Lulu, you know, coming into the end of last split and the beginning of this split, where pretty much it was almost 100% pick and ban. So Zeyzal pretty much on top of his game and showcasing off some mechanical prowess in this bottom lane matchup as well. And I mean, that's what we were talking about with eUnited. It's the mix of all of the rookie talent that has, you know, they didn't necessarily make it into the LCS last split in the promotion tournament, but they've still been able to kind of mature and level themselves up. They swapped out their veteran talent from a duo of EU players to a duo of Korean players, and it's almost been a seamless transition. The fact of the matter is, while they did lose to GCU yesterday, they only dropped 1 match altogether.
I mean, definitely a great season so far out of eUnited. Licorice in particular, we talked about the kind of coming out split that he's had so far, really showcasing his skills on a lot more. The first couple times, you know, the super tanks were pretty broken last split. I think we heard a lot of people talking about that, and now a lot more carries up in this top lane. He's really able to shine, and you see him right now getting the much better of the matchup against Chris early on. Big CS lead has Chris chunked out, and they might be setting up a dive potentially.
And he's about ready to transform to Mega Gnar. Level 7 means you can get this hop, skip, and jump, and a Gnar across the wall. The Wallop comes down, and first blood lands for Licorice. Now Dandy gets the Cocoon stun down onto Sir T. He's going to make his way over to the tower. Will wind up flashing that last boulder toss. So he'll stay alive for now, but there's a minion wave crashing into this tower. Dandy and Licorice, if they play this one right, might be able to pick up a kill on Sir T, but he's got some happy hour passive running and decide to walk away from the regenning Gragas.
A little scary to force that when you lose a lot of the hard CC that is available with the Mega Gnar, as well as the fact that he's much tankier. They didn't quite have an angle. It stalled out as they waited for the next minion wave to come. I like the decision to take it a little bit slower, take that 1 kill lead that you now have over the Kled. You also have a 20 CS advantage, and you know, we're talking about one of the things that United's comp could potentially do different than Big Gods Jackals is actually snowball through the split push, and they're completely online with that win condition. Take those advantages and don't push too hard.
Yep, 72-43 now in the CS department in that top lane matchup for Licorice. So while he was the standout player from the Challenger Series in the top lane last split, Chris was kind of known as the Challenger Gatekeeper, although he did not make the Challenger Split playoffs. He made the Challenger Split playoffs with Big Gods Jackals, but did not play for them when he wound up getting in there. As we can see here, Licorice showcasing the fact that he's a top laner to be feared with here as he gets some help from Dandy.
Yeah, and you see already done the brunt of the work to make this dive possible, to make Chris solo that he knows he can't stay under this turret. Dandy barely gets involved at all, just drops a little bit of damage as, once again, Licorice is actually the one who gets the jump, stun, follow-up with the W after Chris had flashed away from the wall to avoid that. But Licorice still holds on to his flash while making that dive work. Great play out of him.
Oh, well, Big Gods Jackals might be pulling a little bit of a lane swap shenanigan here. We saw Fabi Tristana coming in, and Chris at level 7 has the charge available, but an immediate flash from Licorice. He knew something was up as soon as that ultimate came in, and he decides to back away.
Good decision there to just flash. Don't risk getting the all-in available. It looks like Big Gods Jackals have enough of a jump on this play to actually take this turret. eUnited going to try and answer down this bot side first, but they have a lot of damage to do to it.
Yeah, it's still pretty healthy down there.
Big advantage, and of course the fact that Tristana is one of the best turret takers in the game. Sivir not quite able to match with that push, and Big Gods Jackal is going to be able to grab the first turret of the game off that nice lane swap.
Yep, 4-man strong coming into the top lane. They blew the flash away from Licorice, weren't able to pick up a kill, but they get the first tower gold. He's going to be matched on the bottom side by eUnited, though, as Dandy came down to help that one out. We'll see if they want to go in for a Dragon afterwards, but it is a Cloud Drake, so they decide that they're not going to prioritize that objective, but good rotation on the map coming out from Big God's Jackals.
They had started losing the bot lane as well. The trades were going in favor of eUnited after Sivir got through the early laning phase with her Doran shield, gets a couple points in her skills, and then gets that BF sword. That's when her push really becomes unlocked, and after that, it's going to become a farm fest down the bot side, and Big God Jackals want to open this map up a little bit, it seems, especially just get Chris out of that matchup against the Gnar. He was losing really hard in terms of farm. He was down a summoner now and is going to get threatened to get dove over and over and over. So now that the map has been changed around, he has a long lane to try and farm in.
Yep, so Big God's Jackals being the first ones again off of the recall from the first tower goal, going to be the ones swapping up on the map again, so 80 carriers will now be on the top side, whereas the top laners will be on the bottom side of the map, so a bit of some Australia land setup coming in. And what we were talking about, Zazel landing the hook down onto Sir T. Unbreakable shield comes out from Braum, but Sir T's already taking a lot of damage. Ultimate being used as well as the exhaust went down. Now Danny's going to have to try to flash away as both sides of the mid lane collapse down onto this one. Looks like that eUnited were trying to get a catch here, but they might be caught out themselves now as Chris is coming, utilizing the teleport from the bot side of the map. Big God's Jackals forces eUnited away, but nobody goes down.
Such a good attempt out of Big God's Jackals, where just a couple things were misplayed. Sir T was a little bit early on his ultimate, so Dandy was still up in the air when that was coming down. Flashed out immediately, and then the follow-up that tried to come in with the teleport flank from Chris, not actually able to find anyone because Chris was able to save him. But now GBM caught a little out of position.
You got Command Shockwave, Hemo Play goes down, but he's also got a Thresh Lantern to keep him A-okay, so United's mid laner will get out of there without even really breaking a sweat.
And most importantly, they make sure that there's no Rift Herald that Big God's Jackals can take off that play. They had kind of gotten chunked out, and they were all grouped up as 5, so there's a potential for Big God Jackals to force that one down, but they couldn't actually do it. Now Rift Herald's
still wants to play.
Yeah, he was like, I thought you guys were going to try and fight me.
Come on, guys. You know what? I'll help you push down this lane even if you don't summon me for your team, but lane assignments have kind of gone back to the way that Big God Jackals have wanted it to be on this map. And while we did take a little bit of time to talk about how eUnited has kind of come from the last split to this split, now the fact that they only lost one match to rival United's Gold Coin United, Big God Jackals are a little bit of a different kind of story. They had RF Legendary in the top lane last split that split time with Chris. They made it to the playoffs. They wound up losing to eUnited in the semifinals matchup, and that's the 4th place seed last split. And then they wind up coming into this split. They have Chris full-time. They bring in Sir T from Pain Gaming with the world's experience. Now they kind of have the mixture of the Brazilian and North American squad teams. But they come into this matchup, and they almost limped into the playoffs at some extent. Yeah, they beat CLG Academy to secure themselves in that 4th place seed, but they didn't necessarily improve their record from last split, despite leveling up some of their positions, or so we would think.
I think the big problem is that they still lack a little bit of that kind of star power that you see amongst the top teams in the Challenger Series, with eUnited having Dandy and GBM, and Gold Coin United having Mad Life and Fly, and now even Tempo Storm has a really good roster as well. They have Quas, they have Freeze, they have Revan, they have a lot of different stuff that they're doing. And it just feels like Big God Jackals doesn't quite have that. While Sir T is a nice upgrade, Chris is a nice upgrade, none of them have ever dominated the league, quite like a lot of those names that I just said have at one point been inarguably some of the best players in their region.
While Big God Jackals may not have a lot of big names on their roster, they also didn't necessarily have a lot of ward coverage to find United coming up to this top side. We did see that Zazel and Dandy kind of going hand in hand to clear out the red side of the map, making sure there is a clear path for Deathly to continue pushing down on that top lane tower. Meanwhile, GBM's going to eat a Command Shockwave, but Licorice is already chasing down on a Peek and Woof, and there's no way the Orianna can get away from Gnar.
That's a very weird flash out of Peek and Wolf there. Basically flashed on top of the Gnar. Champion that is renowned for being able to chase you down. Didn't get any sort of terrain in between the two of them, forcing Licorice with no flash, unable to follow, but instead just goes right next to him and gives him the free chase down kill. A little bit curious there, a little bit of panic out of Peek and Wolf, gives away that kill. 2 now on the side of eUnited, 2 turrets as well, and now looking like Dandy's going to want to solo away this Rift Herald for himself.
Sir T's in the area. This might wind up being a smite, but it's extremely low, but there's no help here. Dandy's going to be one that smites down the Rift Herald. Looks like the trinket is on the ground, and Big God Jackal's actually going to have to back away as GBM rotates up from mid lane. Dandy's barely able to secure the Rift Herald for his team.
Very, very dicey there. The fact that they came down to a smite battle. Sir T, I think both got their smites off, actually. He was just a little bit early. Dandy was trying to combo it with his Q, execute damage, and actually was able to secure it. And that was something that could have gone pretty bad. Taking a look at this gank attempt in the mid lane. Here you see Peck and Wolf very, very pushed up. You're likely dead in any situation, but maybe you can try and flash to the right a little bit, get closer to your turret to go more upright as opposed to directly on top of Licorice, because after that, you're in the river against the Gnar, who's very, very happy to chase down in that situation.
Yep, Boomerang slowing you down. He's got a Black Cleaver completed too to just whittle away at your defense with every single Boomerang that winds up hitting you after that as well. So eUnited now with 2 kills on the board and a Rift Herald in their pockets find themselves about 2,500 gold up here. We're approaching about the 15-minute mark of the game, so eUnited pretty much keeping on par with the normal gold leads that they have in these matchups. Of course, being the #1 team coming into this matchup. They generally dominate some of the other early games from the matches here. Big Gods Jackals, though, they have the late game plan. You know that they're going to be wanting Fabi on this Tristana to scale himself up as quickly as possible. And while he does have a decent amount of gold on his side, he's being outclassed by the side of the Sivir coming out from definitely from eUnited at this point in time.
A lot of that's due to the just global gold, small CS lead. The big problem is the fact that you have Licorice with 1,000 gold advantage, just stealing away the red buff on his own, being a menace on this Gnar, doing what Gnar loves to do, split push on his own and just frustrate the enemy team. And now with that red buff, going to be able to take that into that long lane versus Chris and really apply some kill threat to him. And that's where this problem is, because while it's nice to have that, ooh, almost concealed there.
Good dodge out there, and the Lantern just to follow right here. eUnited having some pretty solid mechanical plays against whatever Big Gods Jackals just trying to throw out at them here. We did see the peek and move on the opposite side, and he's basically running away from this fight as Bayano got hooked in there by Zeyzal. He's being chased down on the opposite side by GBM. He popped the Hemo Plague as well. Has to flash away, but now GBM might be stuck between a rock and a hard place. The ultimate used from Braum, and Fabi gets himself a kill.
Yeah, GBM going on way too hard of a solo mission there. Wanted to chase down onto Orianna, was able to survive through that. And even with that death, though, eUnited does not want to give up on this push. They feel like they have gotten Big Gods Jackals very low. Pekka has been forced back to base. So it's a 4v4 ARAM around the mid lane, trying to force the turret down with the help of Rift Herald.
Yeah, they replaced GBM with a Rift Herald, so they're going to be able to push down that tower. However, Licorice now in mini Gnar form, looks like they may have to be a little bit careful from both sides. Nobody wants to really overextend, even though it's technically a 5v4 in favor of Big Gods Jackals. They used a lot of ultimates just to take down GBM, so both sides decide to back away.
I like the idea of what Big Gods Jackals was trying to do if we go back very far to the start of that play. They have both outer turrets down in the side lanes. There's one left, and you know the enemy has Rift Herald. So, of course, at some point, they're going to group as 5 and force that turret down. And they tried to get a jump on that play. That's why Pekka went for that ultimate onto Dandy. They wanted to kill him, the Rift Herald carrier, early on. That play fails, and now they're on the back foot trying to get out. Pekka takes a dangerous path, honestly, that gets cut off by GBM, but then GBM gets a little bit too greedy trying to go for that kill. Ends up kind of getting chain CC'd and blown up there. I think his pool was available that whole time. I never saw him use it, so just wasn't expecting that amount of crowd control to come out of Big Gods Jackals, and actually dies for that one.
And you got the body slam from Gragas. You got, of course, the stun coming out from Braum, then the ultimate on top of that just to make sure that GBM cannot get into his Sanguine pool form and survive. But you did wind up getting the mid lane tower and a Cloud Drake off the back of that play if you are eUnited, so you've only increased your gold lead a little bit further now. In addition to, well, you've given up a kill on your map, so you may not wind up getting a perfect game. You lost the tower anyway, so that really wasn't on the table to begin with. But now they might be looking for a fight around the mid lane here. A flash hook from Zeyzal lands onto Sir T. The fight has been split up a little bit, and Kled's going to be charging in from the opposite side. He goes immediately onto Licorice, who tried to flash in. Command Shockwave brings in 2, but the Explosive Cats disengages the rest of eUnited. Doesn't really knock anybody forward into Big Gods Jackals. The team split up a little bit, and GBM getting some damage down in the back. Kled gets dismounted from Skarl, and the health bars are super low for Big Gods Jackals. Sir T winds up falling on the backside, and the rest of the team has to try to turn tail and run, but they're going to be cut off by Vladimir if they try to run back through the lane that way. eUnited, now their health bars are getting kind of low, but GBM goes forward with the Blast Cone. He's going to be able to pick up a kill on the Bayano. Licorice hops, skips, and jumps and picks himself up yet another kill. A flash over the wall from Deftly as he gets on the board. eUnited wiping the floor at Big Gods Jackals.
Get a 4 for 0 there after it looked like a bit of a sketchy engage on the side of eUnited. Big Gods Jackals tried to disengage, couldn't actually get away. They end up pinned down in the bot lane with nowhere to run. And United takes it a little slow, wait for his GBM to be the one who really initiates that one. And the nice Blast Cone over gets them that kill. And this actually looked like it was going to be okay for Big Gods Jackals at the start. I'm not sure if their decision to use the Gragas ultimate there actually helped or hurt, because GBM was getting focused down a little bit. That ultimate comes in and Licorice starts it off, but then a nice Orianna Shockwave sets them up to potentially kill Dandy, but then the Gragas ultimate knocks him very far away, and so they no longer have a low health target that they can potentially start getting resets on the Tristana on and threatening through this fight. This leaves Sir T up on his own in a 2v1 situation while the rest of Big God's Jackals is unable to collapse and help him out. And now they really have nowhere to run because they see GBM wrapping around the top side potentially. They can't run back to the river, and there's a turret down to the bot left, so they have to kind of just fight here, but they're too far behind to really do anything about that.
And Big God's Jackals realizing that they were cut off there, but a blast cone from GBM just gets him right into the middle of the entire team, and he gets his Sango pull off that time around. Big God's Jackals now, we mentioned, losing 4, not picking up a single kill. eUnited jumping out to a 6-1 kill lead now and sitting at a pretty solid 5,000 gold advantage, now pressing into the 20-minute mark of this game. It's going to be hard pressed for Big God's Jackals, who originally wanted to basically have their game plan to be maybe Kled gets a little bit of an advantage on the top side and can be a little bit of a menace early game, and then give the space for Tristana to scale into the late game. That plan is pretty difficult to execute now that you're already 5,000 gold behind.
Yeah, to be honest, Big God's Jackals' early game was not particularly great. They have a weaker jungler than Dandy with the Elise pick. Your top side matchup is losing. Your bot side matchup should be relatively strong, but we saw Zeyzal was able to kind of blow that advantage early on with that play that neutralizes the bot side. And then mid lane's mostly a farm off. Vladimir usually goes even versus an Orianna. So Big God's Jackals really floundered in the early game, and now with only a team fight team comp, they don't really have much of an option here against eUnited, now down 5,000 gold. They're pretty far behind in this game, both in terms of gold and game circumstance.
Not for nothing, they've tried to do a couple of things. They're pushing on this mid lane tower here. They had the preemptive jump on that Rift Herald play where they tried to catch Dandy up, and he had a really good mechanical outplay with the repellent just in time to dodge out the explosive cast coming out from Gragas. And they had the early lane swap to take down the first tower of the game for themselves. So Big God's Jackals are definitely making moves on the map, but this is kind of the difference in, the not necessarily the power level, but just the rankings in the Challenger Series. You have eUnited, who's lost 1 match, who's been sitting in first place for pretty much the entire Challenger split, being able to adapt to what a 4th place team like Big God's Jackals is doing. So while Big God's Jackals is trying to be proactive, which is usually a difficult point for the Challenger teams to adapt to, eUnited already has the synergy built in. They already have the knowledge of what to do in these situations when your enemy team is trying to make these moves.
eUnited definitely getting the upper hand in a lot of those situations here. Chris in the split push, trying to get onto the exhausted Mini-Gnar farm. One of the few times that Kled can potentially turn the match in his favor. Plus, Fabi's coming down to collapse onto this play, but Chris might go down too fast.
A little too low. Gets the pocket pistol off. Barely going to go down, though, as Licorice trades a kill for himself, but they do get a kill over to Fabi.
1-for-1 trade. Overall, decent for Big God's Jackals. 1, because you get the assist. 2, because you're able to stop that snowballing Gnar, who's very annoying. And that kill goes on to your Tristana, the exact member that you want to get going for your team comp to really take off. And so overall, a 1-for-1 trade that uses 2 members often feels bad, but in this case, it's still good for the side of Big God's Jackals.
There's some shutdown going on to Tristana as well, so Fabi's able to pick up an Infinity Edge off the back of this play, and while Chris may have been baiting, may have been biting off a little bit more than you can chew, I mean, only Big God's Jackals really knows what this play was going to be starting off as. Does, like you mentioned, find the opportunity to go into Licorice, and the one time he thinks he can duel him, but sticks around a little bit too long and goes down.
I think he was trying to use his Q to try and get over that wall with the knockback that comes from it. Ended up a little bit short and still in range with Boomerang from Licorice to grab that kill. A good idea out of Chris, and like we said, overall definitely worth going for, seeing that the Gnar has been exhausted in his mini forms. We won't be getting Gnar in the middle of that 2v1, which is the scary thing that always happens because he Mega Gnar's out, gets a huge health pool, gets some extra resist, and suddenly starts throwing around all this hard crowd control. Didn't happen this time around, and that's why you see Tristana able to grab that kill.
eUnited, though, with their forward positioning on this map, and with all the outer towers down on the side of Big God's Jackals, free to pretty much take the dragon themselves as they get the second Cloud Drake of the game. Next one going to be an Ocean Drake for them. No real combat statistic Drakes in this game, so a little bit sad for eUnited. Happy for Big God's Jackals, though, because that means those objectives they're giving up may not have the most impact in team fights. But eUnited is running them ragged around the map, and at this point with 7 kills to 2, they have a Gnar that's extremely far ahead. I mean, you kind of have to look back down to the bottom side of the map for Big God's Jackals. They're saving grace, and a combination of abilities here from Sir T, just not going to land a flash. Body slam to follow up on the command shockwave was just a whiff, and now eUnited just going to casually walk away from that.
Some fun plays there. Dandy repelling in, taking the lantern out, having a little bit of fun, styling on them
a little bit.
Maybe. Unable to actually find anything there out of Big God's Jackals. Trades flash for flash between Zeyzal and Sir T. A decent idea, like you said. Still being aggressive, looking for opportunities where they think they can find them. Start things out with that shockwave as well. So good coordination out of the team, but just very hard to lock down a lot of the members of eUnited. Elise with that repel, Vladimir with the pool. Thresh, while not particularly mobile himself, does aid everyone else in the team.
Yeah, as you mentioned before, the amount of damage that Mega Gnar can do to a Kled, even if he's mounted to Skarl, just on showcase right there, is the wallop and the Gnar against the wall, and just a couple of boulder tosses going to be dealing almost half of the HP bar coming out from Chris's Kled. Now eUnited, they got themselves a couple of Cloud Drakes. They got every single outer tower on the map down from Big God's Jackals. They're going to be moving on to the next phase of the map, which is knock down some inner towers. So they got Licorice feeling free to split push on the bottom side of this tower is about to go down. And GBM kind of setting up a little bit of a split push of his own on the top side. The rest of eUnited pushing up the mid lane and making sure they've got the vision between themselves and GBM so they can rotate at a moment's notice. And things are working out for them as they got that bottom lane tower by Gnar just being this far ahead.
Really nice lane control out of eUnited, buying space for Gnar by himself. Licorice winning that 1v1, chunking out Chris, forcing him back to base, buys himself the space to take that turret. Now they might find themselves a kill as well.
The charge being used as a little more of a retreat there as Dandy showed up to play on the bottom side of the map, and Chris knew he had to get the heck out of dodge. Lose the flash from that as well. And eUnited in the meantime, though, keeping up the pressure on the opposite sides of the map. Mid lane here, definitely maybe a little bit far forward on his own, but does have a Thresh Lantern to keep himself safe, so that in the spell she will get him out A-OK. And GBM knows that with the rest of his team backing away, that's his signal to get the heck out of top lane as well. Or is it?
Not before he takes a couple Krugs. Getting a little bit greedy here. See if it bites him in the butt. Surti cuts him off.
Yeah, GBM's going to get stunned down, using the Emo Plague as well. The Sanguine Pool is out. Tides of Blood come out as well. He's going to want to flash away from this. An Explosive Cast will knock him back down towards the bottom side of the map here. Surti's going to get the body slam forward, and Fabi actually going to be on a killing spree to pick that one up.
Potentially some miscommunication problems there on the side of eUnited. You see that they just turned a kill on the bot side, and your mid lane is just backed out. GBM getting a little bit greedy, trying to secure a little bit more farm. Goes down for that one, and now Big God Jackals sensing a potential weakness here in eUnited, wants to force down to this Baron.
It looks like they might want to be forcing a fight, actually. Chris coming in with the teleport. Biana uses the Braum ultimate as well, and they knew that everybody from eUnited was around. Bear Trap on a rope's going to rope Dandy back into this one, but Chris is a little bit too far forward from the rest of his team. Do have GBM dead for about 15 more seconds. Big God Jackals were looking for a fight. Did not find the one they wanted. Decided to back away.
Yes, after they get the first kill, you threaten the bear and make the enemy team walk up towards you, and then try and use your Kled ultimate as well as that Tristana jump to find another pick off and hopefully actually win the fight pretty hard. Doesn't quite work out. Different targets. The Kled took a little bit too long to get in, and then while they were able to get the flash out with you know, Fabi jumping in, did not actually find a kill. Only getting that one on GBM feels a little bad. They wanted to get more off that, but couldn't quite do it.
Yeah, well, they are still behind in this game, so getting a kill is going to be getting a kill regardless, as the charge once again being used as more of a retreat on the bottom side, as Chris cannot stand toe-to-toe with Licorice's Gnar.
And it's worth noting, as we see another skirmish here in the top side river, definitely getting forced out low, as well as Biano getting chunked out. It's worth noting that one of the reasons that teleport flank did not particularly work out well for Big God Jack was the fact that right before then, eUnited had gone to that bot lane and forced the ultimate out of the Kled. The fact that Licorice keeps applying so much pressure to Chris that he has to ult defensively over and over and over completely takes away that additional engage tool that we were talking about, where you're taking the pressure off Surti to be the one who needs to engage. But you know, he's once again forced to do it all by himself because this Kled is either pushed in or has no ultimate.
Yep, we've already seen some of the explosive casts not necessarily hitting the marks that Surti would like them to in this game. It's that Pikachu move. Vantage being popped, dodges out on the Cocoon right here, but is being dove by multiple members here from eUnited. Actually winds up having a QSS as well, utilizes that one to break the Thresh hook. eUnited now going to be pushing down to this top side of the map. The rest of Big God's Jackals joining up there. Dandy going to get hit up with the Braum passive, has to repel. Winds up flashing out from that one as well. Biano going to get hooked in, lands the Braum ultimate, only winds up landing on GBM though. So they're going to wind up backing away from the sides of Big God Jackals and eUnited, because on the bottom side of the map, there's still a Mega Gnar just split pushing away on this bottom inhibitor tower.
eUnited have to be a little bit careful though, because a lot of their big advantages do rest on this Mega Gnar. And on the 4-man core versus the 4-man core of Big God Jackals, the Tristana is actually a huge threat. Vladimir and Sivir are two very short-range champions, so if you ever flub and engage or find yourself caught out of position a little bit, that is exactly what a Braum and Tristana is hoping for. So This 4-man side on eUnited, while yes, they are still ahead by a pretty significant margin, they need to understand that their actual comp still loses in a 4v4 situation against Big God's Jackals if they flub their initiation. That time around, they went for a dive on Peckinwolf. They get a really late cleanse out of him. That's great and all, but now you're kind of caught under a turret versus Tristan and Braum, and you see that stun that almost came in forced the flash out of Dandy, and once again, eUnited kind of pushed back around that top side of the map. Then saving grace, of course, is the fact that because Licorice is so far ahead, he's getting his own work down on the bot side.
That's what United realizing that the Gnar split push is going to be the way to win this game. We're not going a little too over-aggressive with their plays, although we do have a Sivir now who's coming into a power spike of her own. Infinity Edge, Essence Reaver, and the Rapid Fire Cannon have been acquired, whereas Fabi's Tristana being one of the basically the sole carry that Big God's Jackal is going to be relying on in the later stages of the game, has stopped off to get that QSS to make sure he's able to keep himself safe. So his own third item, that last Whisper upgrade, has been slowed down a little bit by needing to get this kind of utility item to just keep himself alive.
A little surprising to see him go for the armor pen, given the fact that nobody on the side of eUnited has any armor aside for that Gnar, whose primary job is to be split away from the team. So for the most part, Tristana will not even be hitting him unless they end up in one of those 5v5 situations. Still relatively likely, but I think from this position, you're hoping to find a pick-off, at which point you probably just want more damage, hopefully another Zeal item currently, as opposed to having the QSS and that last Whisper going potentially a little bit too defensive.
Yeah, well, we've seen Tristana's kind of follow suit with the Caitlyn's of the meta so far, going for that double Zeal item build, the Energizer build of Rapid Fire Cannon and the Static Shiv. Of course, only adds to the amount of damage you can do with towers, and with Big God's Jackals down 4 towers to 2, they still have those objectives on the map to take. When you're Tristana, that it just multiplies with your explosive cast to really rip through these objectives, but Big God's Jackals, as you mentioned, maybe playing more for a bit of the team fight kind of presence here, might be needing the Tristana just to stay alive at this point, considering how far behind they are in this game already. 53.8 compared to 47.8 thousand gold is the difference here for eUnited. Ocean Drake is alive on the map, but the Baron has kind of been where a lot of these teams have been dancing around for the time being. And even though eUnited know that Licorice is their split push kind of win condition here, both top laners now level 16. Chris has been able to kind of go back and forth them a little bit. Now we see actually Blue team has gotten the Dragon, while the rest of the red team on the top side here have been going around the Dragon Pit. Zazel might be caught out here. He's actually going to go down to Fabi, who now goes onto a Rampage. eUnited, a little bit caught with their pants down in a bunch of different areas of the map right now. Big God's Jackals, this may be the kind of split-up picks that you were talking about they need, Mark. GBM's going to wind up popping the Hemo Play, pops the Zanya, heals himself up a little bit, but he's going to go down as well, giving 5 kills now over to Fabi's Tristana.
United not going to want to let that one go away unpunished, though. After the kills go down, they push up this mid lane. They grab the mid inner turret. Big God's Jackals, of course, is going to respond by forcing down with this Baron. We have the teleport coming in out of the Licorice, but he has no Gnar Rage built up right now, only in his mini form. Can they stop this Baron?
Oh, we see QSS being burned here by Fabi now, but he's going to be jumped on by the backside from Licorice. Good explosive cast keeps him alive. They knock Dandy back into the Baron pit, so Baron gets angry at Elise, but meanwhile, the rest of Big God's Jackals have to peel away. No Baron for them.
Big God's Jackals really struggling to react appropriately in these teamfight situations. We saw in the previous one, the Gragas ultimate knocking away Dandy when he was the only target available. We're taking a look at the initial pickoff attempt first. Like you said, they heard the Dragon Call go down. That means they know Elise is on the bot side. They see Licorice farming right now, so they go for a force play while the other 3 members are by themselves. Probably a little bit too far up, trying to vision control, getting a little greedy on the map. They get the first kill on the easy Thresh caught in the pit, and then once again, GBM has nowhere to run to. He's cut up in the top side. A nice flank there on the side of Chris. Cuts him off, sets his team up for the second kill. But like I was saying, the problem is when they get on that Baron, and eUnited, of course, contest, they really struggle to find the target that they want to go for.
No, we see another retreat being used on the bottom side of the map. So with both teleports down, that won't necessarily be a repeat of some of the Baron fights we've seen where Chris teleports in a little lacklusterly. I hope if that's even a word. The teleports are more lackluster. Sorry, I don't want Merriam-Webster getting on my case for that one. But Big God's Jackals have been able to find a couple of pickoffs to get themselves some more gold into this game. More importantly, they've gotten it down onto Fabi and the Tristana, who maybe after listening to you has stopped going for the last Whisper item and picked up another Zeal, so we may be seeing a Rapid Fire Cannon built up after that. Of course, that does mean that he's not going to be building extra AD, so he's going to be relying a little bit more on the attack speed and the explosive charge detonations to really get those resets off in fights. On the flip side, though, we see Sivir picking up a little bit of the Fabi itemization himself as they wind up popping the On the Hunt to try to chase down on the Fabi, as we saw GBM trying to cut him off.
Really nice the fact that they forced him out of the mid lane here. It opens up the mid turrets to potentially get burned down. Chris doesn't look like he wants to let this one happen, though, as he moves over from the bot lane. Licorice joins as well, potentially a 5v5 around mid now.
Explosive Cask winds up trying to separate out eUnited, winds up landing on the GBM. Good command shockwave afterwards, but GBM's healing up like crazy. Fabi's finally able to take him down. Licorice goes mega on the front line, and that's going to be enough to get Definitely alive. Definitely winds up picking up 1 kill. Now the health bar's low on a lot of the sides here. Exhaust goes down, but the QSS and the hop away from Fabi is there. So far, it is just a 1-for-1 trade, a mid laner for a jungler.
Very aggressive on the side of Big God's Jackals. Have to blow a lot of resources to get GBM down there. You saw the Orianna Shockwave used exclusively on him to pull him away from that Lantern, make sure they actually get that kill. That does open up Licorice to go in. He finds a pretty nice Mega Gnar ultimate to actually knock some members back into the shorter range side of eUnited. That gets them their first kill, but then they have a hard time chasing through the rest of that fight. Fabi was alive this entire time. Wolf as well, untouched through most of that fight. No way for them to continue to chase through. Taking a look at it, like we said, Sivir ultimate was already blown, forcing up the mid lane. Now GBM's caught out of position. Ultimate back in the team. He pops his Zonias, and there's the Lantern potentially. A nicely timed Orianna ultimate pulls him back in, but this buys an opening for Licorice to go in, present some targets for his team to melt them down. Chris almost goes down as well, but a little bit too much threat by Fabi, and Wolf forces Licorice out of the fight, and then very hard to step forward with that turret still alive.
So eUnited, while maybe going a little bit even or maybe a little bit behind here, continuing to fight down against Big God's Jackals. Things actually working out a little bit for Big Gods in these situations, but now there might be a flank down on Chris, and Gnar against the wall. The Wallop's starting to follow after that, but this Braum passive Sun's going to pop as well, but a really good hook from Zeyzal brings them back into this fight. A dismount comes in from Chris's. Scarl runs away from this fight, as does the rest of Big God's Jackals. They got to back away with the Braum ult.
They're able to get Chris down pretty low, recalling in a weird spot.
Oh, they had a ward. They saw him. He wasn't in the brush, so Chris is going to get caught out here. Slowed down by the frozen mallet from Gnar. Has to blow his flash. The rest of Big Gods try to save their solo laner, and they will succeed so far. Chris gets out alive.
Really, really greedy recall by Chris there, just not in the brush. Even if you are in the brush there's no reason eUnited might not walk through there in a second. And costs himself his flash, as well as a lot of pressure on the map. eUnited dips into the top jungle, gets a lot of vision control, and now they're forcing down this Baron right away.
Yeah, and Big God's Jackals, they're going to have to basically face check this one. Don't have a lot of vision in the area, barely putting it down on the backside of the pit, but this Baron isn't necessarily going down super fast either. A little bit of an issue in who's going to be tanking this one. Command Shockwave from the bot side here. Pikamu's wrapped around. In the meantime, Licorice zoning away the rest of Big God's Jackals. So Orianna does wind up stopping the Baron, but they have to be careful about this follow-up fight here. Chris is going to wind up using the retreat, but it lands down onto Licorice, who hops over the wall into Mega Gnar form. Biano in the front line here will eat most of that. Gnar ult coming in. Gnar now, he's going to wind up going mini. The explosive casket thrown out to disengage, and this fight's a little bit chaotic here. A hook on the Sir T pulls him back into this fight. eUnited and Big God's Jackals both dancing back and forth. Pikamu has no mana. Some of the health bars are extremely low, and neither team really wants to overcommit to a fight right now. But a teleport comes in from Chris, a flash away from most of eUnited as Chris is coming out the backside to try to jump down on the Dandy, but GBM's going to flash forward to zone them away. Chris dismounts for what seems like the 4th time in this fight, as GBM heals himself back up to full in the front line. A flash away from Sir T, but definitely gets the first kill. Make that a double kill. eUnited finally gets some kills in this fight.
It's been a long time since eUnited has been able to find an opening here on the side of Big God's Jackals, but the teleport in on the side of Chris gets that fight going again, and it feels like Big God Jackals never wants to actually kill Dandy. They keep giving him tools out of fights and situations. This time around, they give him a target to repel to after he's caught out in the front line. But Big God Jackals does not want to lose the Baron for free. They want to start this Elder Dragon, not going to be able to do it at all. Licorice by himself able to deter that, and a really close fight on the side of Big God Jackals. Fabi was almost completely untouched throughout the entire first half of that fight, the initial fight in the top jungle before it got reinitiated in the river. And the problem was, when they did go for that reinitiation, Chris went in right as Elise started repelling, gave him a target to get out on, as well as presented the target for eUnited to focus down. So everyone's very low. Yeah, he comes in with the teleport, and he goes right on to Elise, but then he dives back into the fight, gives himself, to get hooked, focused down. If he E'd out towards the Elise, he has nowhere to repel, most likely. Maybe he gets to the ward, but I think that was out of the range. And instead, he just gives himself as the obvious target to kill. If he goes down right away, and then shortly after that, it's an easy chase through on the side of eUnited, able to get, most importantly, the jungler, take that smite down, and then from there, it's a free Baron.
Yeah, and right before that, what seemed like a 5-minute long fight in the top side of the map, eUnited was having difficulties pressuring down into the base of Big God's Jackals and having a hard time actually standing up toe-to-toe in some of these kind of chaotic engagements. But they come up with 2 kills here, most importantly on Deathly, who's now in his own late-game carry build here on the Sivir. 4-0 and 3, pretty much full itemization right now. Big God's Jackal is going to be hard-pressed now to defend against a Baron buffed up side from eUnited. In addition to that, they got the Elder Dragon too, so they have pretty much everything at their disposal to crack the base of Big God's Jackals. Let's see if they can do it, though. Big Gods might want to be able to find out some of those picks again, and if they do, then we have questions for eUnited about if they can finish it, but they got a Baron buff to blow through first.
And the big thing, of course, is the fact that Licorice still has a lot of split push priority against Chris here. Gonna try and fight him out, but Fabi's coming over once again, trying to collapse onto him. He does land the CC. Fabi will get in range now.
Yeah, and actually Bayano's coming down as well. This is going to look at the top side of the map completely open to the 4 members strong of eUnited, so the 2 of Big God Jackals can't defend against this. So they decide to deal with the split push and completely lose the top side of the map. They finally are able to take down Licorice, but they lose a top lane inhibitor for that.
Very surprising to see them commit Bayano down there as well. It would have been hard, even with Fabi showing down the bot side, to really go for that kill. I guess it makes sense if you don't think you can get it with just 2 men, commit even harder, because as soon as you show Fabi down there, he's really the big team fight threat. And so the 4-man side of eUnited is obviously going to try and force very hard around that turret. You don't have great engage tools, but you can just Sivir ult and then have a Vladimir running at your face. That's pretty intimidating. Will probably force most people off of the turret. So not much Big God Jackals can do when you're going up against a double late game neutral buffed up team. And they're able to find a turret and answer as well as a kill. So not the end of the world, despite the fact that they do lose the top inhibitor for it.
I don't know. They lose a top lane inhibitor tower and an inhibitor for a tier 1 outer tower on the bottom side and getting another kill down onto the Gnar. It's not necessarily the trade that I would make, but then again, I'm not a professional player, so I don't really know on that one. But Big God's Jackals, you mentioned, they're still making proactive plays, and I think that's the big thing to kind of take away from this is, while the decision-making may be a little bit scatterbrained, they are still making aggressive plays and still trying to do things on the map rather than just ceding it to eUnited like we've seen challenger teams do previously.
And to be fair, for a trade like that, you don't know exactly how it's going to play out.
Exactly.
I mean, Fabi could have got that kill right away in that initial engage if Licorice had decided to fight instead of back off. There was no vision, so there's no reason to think that he's instantly going to choose to run away.
Right.
Maybe you get that kill faster, you can get a recall off, you can teleport Chris in or just run him up there. You don't know exactly what's going to happen. So they were obviously trying to make a play. They did not want to sit back against a Elder Dragon buff and Baron buffed up team and just watch their inhibitor turrets go down. So I appreciate going for that play. It's just unfortunate that they have to kind of give up that top inhibitor to make that work.
At the same time, they've used the charge aggressively instead of defensively in that trade as well. But now they're going to be dealing with the remnants of a Baron buff coming out here as Dandy. On the Elise, looks like he has the Runic Affinity buff to give himself a little bit of extra time on the Baron buff and push down on this mid lane. But the rest of Big God Jackals are here to defend. Licorice in the meantime, this is a minor setback for him on the bottom lane split push game as he continues to pressure on that side of the map. But eUnited have now super minions on the top side, so they have themselves pretty much all of their lanes covered here. And Big God Jackals will have to eventually deal with either super minions on their Nexus or Licorice hitting their bottom lane inhibitor.
We'll have to see. It is very hard for the side of eUnited to really easily hit a turret versus an Orianna. Sivir Ricochet is great for getting some backline damage down, but at some point she does have to walk up to hit the turret, and that's when you get shot back by the Tristana and the Orianna.
Even though you got a rapid fire cannon on Sivir, your range is probably still not the same as a level 1 Tristana, considering Sivir has a very short auto attack range. Now you're dealing with a Tristana who has a rapid fire cannon of her own, so the Energizer build fully online for Tristana.
Definitely, just got to stop walking up there. Yeah. Keeps getting shot in the face.
He's getting chunked out. He does have a Thresh to lantern himself out and kind of get himself back into this one, but he does have a lot of lifesteal on his side. Has the Mercurial Scimitar already completed. Don't exactly know if he has a Elixir ticking on himself quite yet since he's full build. So he just kind of ricochets, auto crits the wave, and heals himself back up to full. But still, mid lane tower taking about half HP in damage. Now Licorice just kind of rotated up to the top side of the map. He's going to be ushering super minions in with him as he harasses on the backside of this fight and trying to get some more openings for the rest of eUnited to land down onto this tower. They hook Bayano in, but he's got the Unbreakable Shield. Actually, good knockup. Knocks up most of eUnited. They get the stun down on the GBM, who goes into pool form. The Hemoplague has not been used quite yet. Gnars everybody back towards the tower. eUnited will finally be able to get that mid lane tower down. The Big God Jackals health bars are the opposite of that. They're quite small at this point as eUnited are crushing through the base. The first kill lands for Dandy onto Chris, and the rest of Big God's Jackals are running back to their summoner platform here. eUnited have cracked open the base. They've gotten the double kill for Dandy, and they're going to be focusing down on, well, maybe some style points on the summoner platform, but also these towers on the Nexus. Game 1 for eUnited looks to be potentially close out here, although they are a little bit afraid of Big God's Jackals at full health. They land the hook and the exhaust onto Tristana, so Fabi out of the fight now means that this will be GG. Game 1 to eUnited.
A lot scrappier of a game than I think you would have expected after seeing that early 5,000 gold advantage. eUnited struggled heavily around the top half of the map to get things going. Big God's Jackals were very, very aggressive, even on the back foot, making a lot of plays, especially when they were trying to target down Licorice, stop that Gnar split push from really going and taking over the game. They did a pretty respectable job at that, but of course the problem becomes you have to make so many attempts to get back in the game. Eventually you mess one up. They mess one up right next to a Baron buff. That ends up going over to eUnited, and just a couple minutes later, the game's going to be over.
Yeah, well, eUnited, as you mentioned, knowing what their kind of win condition was for that game, knowing that the Licorice split push on the Gnar is going to carry them over into whatever point of the game they needed to for the rest of their team to really scale up. They had Vladimir and they had Sivir, so we saw in the later stages of the game their team fight was still pretty powerful, but didn't necessarily have the same kind of impact you would expect from having that extremely early gold lead.
And that's the thing, is that it was just felt like United for the most part were farther ahead than they should have been in a couple different positions. We talk about the bot lane play, Azazel getting an advantage basically by himself just with a single flay. The fact that GBM on the Vladimir, while it is a matchup that, you know, it's hard for the Orianna to abuse too much, you can still get a little bit bigger of a lead than ended up happening there. That's pretty much even farm. And once United kind of got the bot side of the map stabilized, the top side really got blown open. Yeah,
well, they want to get into the first spot on the tower dive up there, so let's like dial it back a little bit towards the earlier stages of this game, because eUnited, as you mentioned, at 20 minutes in, did have a 5,000 gold lead, and a lot of that came off of the back of some early game fights, specifically around the river area. 18 minutes in, eUnited were able to get themselves what seemingly looked like a good engage for Big God's Jackals at first, or a good turnaround from them, but it turned into a 4-0 for eUnited.
Right, well, something that happens is a couple people aren't sure if they want to chase Surtir or not, and what ends up happening is that Orianna Shockwave pulls GBM in, or excuse me, Dandy in, and he becomes a bit of a target, but then the Gragas ultimate tries to get comboed in. It's a little bit late. It ends up saving Dandy, and now there's no easy target for the carries of Big God's Jackals to focus down. Surtir never is able to group back up with his team. He gets focused down. Now it's a 4v5. You're low, you're behind in gold, and you're trying to find a way out of here. You're pinned up against the wall. They're trying to force eUnited off of them, but eventually GBM takes this blast cone in really well timed, gets an opening on the rest of the team, gets a kill on Biano, and now there's no longer a frontline member available. And Big God Jackals trying to scatter to the wind. Fabi sneaks away from the top side, but it still ends up a 4-0 on the side of eUnited.
Yeah, and if that wasn't cementing enough for eUnited to be pretty much ahead in that game, that gave Licorice's Gnar the kind of the lead that he needed over Chris's Gnar and Chris's Kled in that matchup, basically to go into that split push mode and continuously win the 1v1, continue to get the charge out as a retreat, and then eliminate the teleport option for an engage coming out from Big God Jackals. But it took a very long time for eUnited to proactively push into the base from the side of Big God's Jackals. It actually took a Baron buff for them to even take that one down.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that we saw United was really struggling. I mean, even the first inner turret that they took on the top side of the map was one that came after they'd given up 2 kills, and they traded those kills out for that turret. So they were struggling the entire time to find openings of their own. And like you said, that Baron buff that they got actually came off the back of a mistake from Big God's Jackals reinitiating a team fight with the teleport.
Yeah, about 36.5 minutes into the game, there was a Baron buff fight, or a Baron fight, that United wound up taking. Basically, was a fight that went on for about a minute before this, but this is really the turning point here when Chris re-teleports into this fight.
And the decision to retake this fight actually wasn't the problem. It was that once Chris teleported in, there's an obvious target on the Elise to try and focus down. Instead, he uses his joust right into the middle of 4 members of United, presents himself as an easy target to kill. He gets focused down, as well as providing a repel target for Dandy to get out of there. And then once he's dead, chase through, you pick up the Gragas as well. That's 2 down, the smite down, and an easy Baron buff to take there.
Yeah, and then from that point forward, the split push start of Licorice became so impressive that we saw Big God Jackals commit 3 members down to the bottom side. They lost the top lane inhibitor, and then a couple short minutes later, the Baron buff fades away, but so does Big God Jackals base.
I mean, that's what we're talking about. 2 team fight comps going at it. One very far ahead. A max item Sivir already, no joke in the late game, and as well as a tank who's much further ahead. So no surprise to see that once they fight around that mid inhibitor, it's an easy victory for United.
Yeah, good stuff coming out from United, who are fighting for that first place spot in the Challenger Series. The broadcast, in the meanwhile, is going to be going on a cooldown for a few minutes, but don't go anywhere. After the break, it's Game 2 of Big God's Jackals versus eUnited. down. The Big God Jackals health bars are the opposite of that. They're quite small at this point as eUnited are crushing through the base. The first kill lands for Dandy onto Chris, and the rest of Big God Jackals are running back to their summoner platform here. eUnited have crashed open the base. They've gotten a double kill for Dandy, and they're going to be focusing down on, well, maybe some style points on the summoner platform, but also these towers on the Nexus. Game 1 for eUnited.